Courtland Sutton gets a new 4-year, $92 million extension with the Denver Broncos at the age of 30. But should you want him for your fantasy football leagues in 2025? We're going to talk about that. Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos wide receiver, like I mentioned, 30 years old. It was, it was a definitely, it was a tough run for him there for a little while. Whenever Sean Payton first got there with the Broncos, he was the talk of a lot of trade rumors. People were wondering whether or not the team was going to commit to him, whether or not they were going to kind of go their own way. And I think with this signing and this extension, it goes to show a lot about what the team thinks about him and what they think about him as far as his future. They've shown us this in two different ways. One, they've paid the guy. Really, three different ways. Really, one, they've paid the guy. Two, they haven't built the wide receiver core around him to one bit. You look at the other wide receivers that they have in Denver. That Marvin Mims Jr., Devon Vele. The biggest draft allocation they had in this draft was Pat Bryant in the third round. You're hearing stuff in camp about dudes like Trent Sherfield looking like they could be contributors this year. Troy Franklin is another guy in the fourth round from 2024 that's on the roster. But clearly, you have the alpha wide receiver here in an offense with a young quarterback that we view as ascending in Bo Nix, with a great coach in Sean Payton that is going in the fifth round of your fantasy drafts. He's going in the fifth round, coming off a really big season last year, one that got him paid. We know that Courtland Sutton's always been a great prospect, but it's whenever you kind of dig in deep to some of these stats, some of the advanced receiving stats for Courtland Sutton, you realize what an alpha he is, what a core piece of that offense he is. Fourth in the league last year as far as his team air yard share at 44.9%. That's right there with guys like Malik Neighbors and A.J. Brown. Just kind of showing you it's that kind of what focus there is on him in the receiving game that really hasn't added anybody besides Evan Ingram. Like, that feels like the biggest addition that they've made to their pass catchers this whole offseason. And again, we're talking about an offense where everybody's like, oh, they're going to be in the AFC West. They're going to be playing these high-flying matches against the Chargers of the world. And they get the easy games against the Raiders. And they get to play in these high-flying matchups against the Chiefs and all this. And everybody's so excited about Bo Nix. And it's great. I mean, I understand that Bo Nix can run the ball a little bit. But if you're excited about Bo Nix, you have to be excited about his primary alpha pass catcher, who the team has just committed to, and who, if you look at over on fantasypoints.com, they have the first read percentage. I believe let's see. So in first read percentage, 30.9% of the time, he's Bo Nix's first read. That is sandwiched right in between CeeDee Lamb at 30.6% of the time that he's Dak Prescott's first read, and Nico Collins 31% of the time. Right there with Amon-Ra St. Brown, 31.6% of the time. We're talking about guys going 4 rounds earlier that are the quarterback's first read. And again, a good ascending quarterback on a team that people are legitimately excited about. As far as if you look at the expected fantasy points per game last year, it was a year where Courtland Sutton was wide receiver 12 and it's in expected fantasy points, well ahead of guys like DJ Moore, who's going ahead of him. And right there along the lines of other guys who, 15.6 expected fantasy points. Nico Collins was at 16.2. Drake London was at 16.6. So only one expected fantasy point more. It goes to show that the volume is going to be there for him. They haven't added anything. And we can look at just the sports prediction markets too, I guess the sports betting markets. It's not always great to look at these, but it's certainly an interesting data point that, say, just Underdog, right, in the Pick'em lobby. They have Courtland Sutton at 899.5 receiving yards this season. You pick the over-under. Guys that are going, he's going as wide receiver 23. Guys who are going at, say, like wide receiver around wide receiver 18 to wide receiver 20, Mike Evans. They only have him for 49 more receiving yards this season. You have Devontae Adams going much, much earlier. They only have him for 35 more. His over-under set at 935.5. Marvin Harrison Jr. going well ahead, 949.5. Heck, you have Rashee Rice. I guess that's probably off the board at this point. But for a while there, he was sitting at 874.5, less than Courtland Sutton. And at one point, Rashee Rice was going second round. Garrett Wilson's over-under is sitting at somewhere between 925 and 949. We're talking about a difference in 25 and 45 yards and the difference between early third round and late fifth round when we talk about Courtland Sutton here. Whenever we did our offensive line ranking stuff, I was interested to see that the Denver Broncos have the third best offensive line in the league as far as our rankings this year. That's going to be something that helps to keep Bo Nix upright and allows for some of those downfield targets. Like we said, that big air yard share for him. The strength of schedule is nothing to write home about, but it's not completely terrible. And then the other thing is, if you just look at the environments in which these games are going to be played, right? You think about Denver and you're like, oh, it gets cold there. I don't want my guys playing outdoors and stuff. I get it, but not half these guys. Like, are you worried about taking Jamar Chase up in Cincinnati where the weather gets terrible? And the thing is too with Denver, as far as an outdoor team, that's actually reasonable. They have 4 dome games this season at the Colts, at the Chargers, at Houston, and at Las Vegas. That doesn't seem like much, but when you think about it, that's once every 4 games he's going to get to be in a dome. Whereas teams like Baltimore, 1 dome game, Cincy, 1 dome game, the Jets, 1 dome game, New England, 1 dome game. Same with the Kansas City Chiefs. Then you got this whole grip of 2 dome game teams like the Steelers and the Dolphins and the Browns. You get 4 dome games. You get basically for the fantasy season, once every 4 games, you get to play in a dome. And speaking of something that happens once every 4 or 5 games, that's how often Courtland Sutton busts for you in fantasy football. So in PPR leagues, Courtland Sutton over the last 2 seasons hasn't had the biggest upside. But dude, is your wide receiver 3 that you get in the 5th round, you go 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, then go Courtland Sutton. He's only gotten less than 10 PPR points in a game 21.1% of the time over the course of the last 2 seasons. Meaning, if you just look at the guys who he stacks up against in those particular metrics, as far as, okay, I can put this guy in, he's not going to give me a performance that just wrecks my week and gets me less than 10 PPR points this week. That's 21.1% of the time. Okay, that sounds, it's once every 5 times. And you say, like, well, is that good? I'll tell you who the only ones over the last 2 years who've been better than him in this metric. Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Malik Neighbors. End of list. Look, for a guy you're getting in the 5th round of your fantasy football drafts, what am I missing?
This is Anthony Richardson, and you're listening to RosterWatch.
This is AJ Brown, and you're listening to RosterWatch.
This is Josh Allen, and you're listening to RosterWatch.